And so they suggested, or they commanded, that we do Quran recitation with tajweed and tafseer. So alhamdulillah, in implementing the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, we're going to follow that. And it is a great subject. Now for the continuation of the reading of the book Collections of Goodness, that will be done, inshallah, at a different time slot. Those lessons will be made available to you, inshallah. But for now, for today, we're going to be using this time from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. on Fridays for Quran and tajweed and tafsir. So it's going to be a combination of reciting and a combination of explaining tajweed. That's the proper way to get the proper recitation. And we're going to do some tafsir. So the format, the way it's going to go, today, inshallah, we're going to start with the most important, which is the obligation. So the obligation upon each and every accountable Muslim, I need to recite Al-FaatiHah, I need to acquire it and to recite it properly so that their prayer can be valid. Because according to Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i radiyallahu anhu, the Muslim who is praying, he has to recite Al-FaatiHah in every single rak'ah, for every single prayer, whether he is the Imam or whether he is the follower or whether he is praying by himself. So Al-FaatiHah is essential, and it is the surah that the Muslim recites every single day repeatedly. And there's many deep meanings and very important knowledge that is contained in the Fatiha. So there is going to be a deep dive into the verses, and there is going to be the opportunity to, for example, check your recitation. We're going to point out certain places that some people might have some trouble with, and correcting certain common mistakes that people make when reciting Al-Fatihah. This is something that is important for us as Muslims because it is very honorable and very virtuous and very rewardable to be a student of the Quran, a reciter of the Quran, a teacher of the Quran, and a learner of the Quran. And that is evidenced by the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ, which means the best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it. So it is a blessing for us that we are being included in this hadith, inshallah. We ask Allah for that. Also, like I said, we're going to be doing a deep dive. So we're going to try to go into as much detail as possible. And after Al-Fatihah, I've decided that we're going to select certain surahs. Because every Muslim, they encounter certain surahs that, they come up constantly, or that there's a benefit to reciting them on a consistent basis. For example, like Surah Al-Mulk. It's confirmed in the hadith that the Muslim who is consistent on reciting Surah Al-Mulk every night, after sunset, then he will be protected from the torture of the grave, and it's guaranteed. And it's only 30 ayat. For example, so this is confirmed about the virtue of reciting Surah Al-Mulk. So to have that recitation and to have also the meaning, this would be something very extra special, something very beneficial. And then maybe we'll go to, let's say, Surah Yasin, because it's very beneficial. The Prophet ﷺ, he ordered us to recite Surah Yasin upon the deceased. اقرأوا ياسين على موتاكم. Also, the very many benefits of if someone has a need and they want that need fulfilled, they recite Surah Yasin with the intention of that. Some righteous, pious Muslims of the past, if one of them would get sick, 40 of them would gather, and each one would recite Surah Yasin one time, and by the blessings of that recitation for the 40 times, that person would be cured. So that's another benefit. And of course you can recite the 40 times yourself. It would take you a while, but it's doable. Also like Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Maybe we'll go to Surah Al-Waqi'ah after that. The one who recites Surah Al-Waqi'ah for 40 nights in a row, then they would be protected from poverty. So this is a great benefit. And stuff like that. Like Surah Al-Kahf, for example. The Prophet ﷺ, he told us the one who memorizes the first 10 ayat of Surah Al-Kahf, he'll be protected from the Dajjal. Yani if he encounters the Dajjal and he recites those ayat, the Dajjal will be repelled from him. And in some narrations, the last 10. And so the scholars, they said, memorize the whole thing so we could work on that recitation. And things like that. Yeah, so that we can get acquainted with the Quran. Of course, whoever wants to advance or review in Juz' Amma or Juz' Tabarak, in any of these Juz', then they could do that and we can progress along. But always, there's going to be the deep dive into Tajweed. Because this is one of the, and in order to get those benefits that we're talking about, and that reward that is associated with reciting the Quran by acquisition, the person has to recite with Tajweed. And so that means he has to learn the rules of Tajweed so that he can recite them. And so he can recite with Tajweed. And we're going to talk about the difference between reciting with Tajweed and making mistakes, etc. So all of that information, and this is to motivate you, to encourage you to do this deep dive on the Quran. So some general judgments about it, about the Quran. There's a confirmed hadith about the reward associated with reciting the Quran, which is that the one who recites and with Tajweed and with a connected chain, right? So we're going to explain acquisition after we mention the meaning of the hadith. The hadith says, the one who recites Quran, and the minimum amount of reward that he gets is 10 hasanat per letter of the Quran. And so this is a specialty of the Quran. When we narrate the hadith, when we say the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man khayrukum man ta'allama al-Qur'ana wa 'allama." Right? We mentioned the words that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, the words that the Prophet ﷺ spoke, that are not Qur'an. So we do get reward when we narrate the hadith with a sincere intention and to, for example, spread the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, to make Ahlul Sunnah stronger, etc. So we do get reward for saying the hadith with a specific intention, but we don't get 10 good deeds per letter of that hadith that we recite. That's special to the Quran. For the Quran, when you read Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, for each one of those letters, the minimum reward that you get is 10 hasanat, 10 good deeds counted for you. For each letter, that's the minimum. And you can get more than that, based on your sincerity, based on the effort that you put, based on the perfection of your tajweed. So all these benefits that you would get, mashallah, reciting the Quran in itself is an act of worship. It is ibadah. And so that's a specialty of the Quran. But the condition for that is reciting in a valid way, reciting with tajweed, reciting with acquisition. What is this acquisition? This is from Arabic, at-talaqqi. What is that? It means being connected part of the chain of those that recited. Now for the Quran, you have a special ruling, which is you only get considered to be connected to the chain if you were heard reciting by someone who's connected to the chain already. So for Quran, the acquisition, the talaqqi, is more specific than the acquisition of, let's say, hadith, or let's say a book in the Islamic law, or let's say tafseer, or the creed, or the knowledge of grammar, or the science of sarf, or whatever, any other science, Islamic science. You can get the acquisition just by listening. So the teacher speaks, he gives you the information goes to your ear, hopefully into your heart, and it's absorbed. Now that's acquisition. Now, if you were to repeat what you heard, it'll be considered that you're narrating that with the chain, with the connected chain to the person you heard it from, and with the condition that that person you heard it from is also connected to the chain. But with the Quran, if the Imam is reciting for you, the teacher is reciting the Quran, he's reciting Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and you're just listening, that by itself is not acquisition. That teacher has to hear you say it back. So either you practice and you read, and then so that when it's time for you to take the surah by acquisition, then you read it for the teacher and he listens. So the teacher listening to you recite, that's how the acquisition happens. Or the teacher says it and then you repeat it after him. So the teacher says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and you repeat it back. Or you read it on your own, yani out loud, and the teacher listens to you. That's how the acquisition happens with the Quran. And it's not like, for example, the books of hadith, where you don't have to literally hear every single hadith that is narrated by the teacher in order to have a connected chain. He could just say, here, this is my copy of this hadith. Everything is already, let's say, validated, and everything is already marked, and everything is already, let's say, stamped for approval. And that shaykh just gives it to you, and he gives you permission to narrate it. So that permission is a way of acquisition. But that type of acquisition is not applied to Quran. So a shaykh can't say, here's, for example, a surah that I copied from the Quran, I'm giving it to you in your hand, and then now you could recite it with acquisition. That is not how it works for the Quran. So alhamdulillah, that it has to be recited. And now this Quran that we received, it is the only revealed book that is still intact. Because the Quran is not the only revealed book that was ever revealed. There were a total of 104 revealed books. Now the most famous four are the original Torah, the original Injil, the original Zabur, and the Quran. The original Torah was revealed to Prophet Moses alayhi salam. The original Injil was revealed to Prophet Isa, Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. The original Zabur was revealed to Prophet Dawood, Prophet David alayhi salam. And the most famous of the four, and the only one that remains unchanged, is the Quran. And it's the last one, it's the final one. So the Quran, it is revealed by Allah. The Quran, it is revealed by Allah. Yani, this means that it was not authored by man. the Quran was not authored by man. So that's the meaning of when we say the Quran is revealed by Allah, it is not authored by man. As this is an important part of our belief as Muslims, that we know that the Quran is not authored by any man or angel. Because the non-Muslims, they like to try and antagonize the Muslims, and they like to try and talk bad to the Muslims, and they say, oh, Muhammad wrote the Quran, and we tell them no. So they try to argue about this point, but they don't have an argument. Why? Because what they're saying is not based on evidence. What they're saying is they're just saying it to say it. But for us, the Quran, it is something very serious, and we say it is the kalam of Allah. Yani it is the expressions referring to the eternal and everlasting attribute of Allah. So we can say about the Quran, kalamullah, because they're words and expressions that are referring to the eternal and everlasting attribute of Allah. But those words that we recite, when we say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, those words themselves are not the attribute of Allah. So when we say Kalamullah, we could be referring to the revealed terms, the words and letters and languages and sounds that we recite, and it could be referring to, when we say Kalamullah, we could be referring to the attribute of Allah. But the words and letters and sounds that we recite, also that we can call Quran, is not the attribute of Allah. Rather, those words and sounds and letters that we recite, they are expressions referring to the attribute of Allah. That is not a sound, letter, or language. So alhamdulillah, that we have been guided to be students of the Quran and to learn the Quran. I will get into the miraculousness of the Quran, and as we go through these classes, I'll mention that time and time again. Because if I focus on each subject having to do with the Quran and do a deep dive on each subject, it'll take a long time. So there'll be a mixture of all the deep dives in one session, and they'll have different parts. So another thing I want to mention before we start with the recitation is a very important judgment to know nowadays. And this is just in line, this is complying with the Islamic law. And this is not like a personal agenda. It's not that, for example, we don't want people to learn the Quran. No, what we want is for people to learn the Quran properly. Because it's not a free-for-all. It's something that many people, it's like they're unaware of it. And obviously there's a lot of having to do with the corruption of the mentality of many people, where many people have the mentality that they can just do anything without being questioned, without seeking permission, without checking. And so that's dangerous to do when it comes to Islam. When it comes to something like the Quran is something that has a high status, it's noble. So you don't just, treat it like you're flipping the pages at Barnes & Noble. It's not. This is not what it is. So when I mention this judgment, because it's very important to know, it is Islamically unlawful to translate the verses of the Quran word for word into other languages. Keyword, word for word. It is Islamically unlawful to translate the verses of the Quran word for word into other languages. Allah Ta'ala said, وَكَذَلِكَ أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا. Allahu Akbar. One thing that you're going to learn about the Quran, one of its names, Al-Kitab Al-Mubin. Yani the clear book. Very clear. Yani meaning that the majority of the verses in the Quran and the foundations of the Quran are explicit. There's no room for ambiguity. Now, of course, there are verses of the Quran that, because of the vastness of the Arabic language, that one word that is mentioned in that verse, for example, in a certain verse, it'll have 15 different meanings. That word, linguistically, in the Arabic language, according to what the Arabs understand about that word, when they hear that word, they know that it can mean 15 different things. So those verses in the Quran that contain those words, what is the approach? Yani, since they're not explicit, meaning the words used only have one meaning, one linguistic meaning, when the word that is mentioned in the Quran has more than one linguistic meaning, then this is not called explicit. Rather here, what do we refer to? We refer to what the Prophet ﷺ said. We refer to the fundamentals of Islam, and we refer to the sound mind. So, because the Quran cannot contradict itself, and nothing in the Quran can contradict the mind, and nothing about the Islamic creed can contradict the mind. So, those words and those verses that have more than one meaning linguistically, they have to be given an alternative explanation other than the literal. Because if the literal meaning were applied to those words, it would lead to contradiction in the Quran, and it would lead to contradicting the fundamentals of Islam and contradicting the sound mind. And of course, that's falsehood. Whatever contradicts the fundamentals of Islam, whatever contradicts the sound mind, that is a clear sign that it is false. But so that's the judgment. The ayah that we recited, it means, surely we have revealed it as an Arabic Quran. Surely we have revealed it as an Arabic Quran. What is it? And وَكَذَلِكَ أَنزَلْنَاهُ revealed it. Revealed what? The Quran. وَكَذَلِكَ أَنزَلْنَاهُ قُرْآنًا عَرَبِيًّا. So that ayah means, surely we have revealed it as an Arabic Quran. What is we referring to? Allah. This is called the royal we. Meaning Allah Ta'ala referring to Himself in that, with that pronoun in the Arabic language. This is out of showing the high status, emphasizing the high status of Allah. As He is the supreme owner, He is the absolute authority, and no one has a status above His status. So the ayah means, surely we have revealed it as an Arabic Quran, not a French Quran, not an English Quran, not a Spanish Quran, not a German Quran, not any other language. It's specified in the Quran, Arabic. So the whole entire Quran is in Arabic. So what is the wisdom behind mentioning that this Quran was revealed in Arabic? We hear the recitation, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Arabs who are hearing it during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they're not confused if it's Arabic or not. They know it's Arabic. So what's the wisdom behind explicitly mentioning that Allah revealed it in Arabic? that it is unlawful to translate the verses of the Quran word for word into other languages. In another ayah, Allah informed us that the Quran was revealed in an explicit Arabic mother tongue. This meaning is explicit in the verse بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. So this is our proof. Moreover, the richness contained in the vocabulary of the Arabic language is non-existent in other languages. So that's another thing. And meaning that what is the thing that is forbidden? To supposedly translate it word for word. Why? Because number one, the Quran is a miracle. And part of the definition of the miracle is that it cannot be imitated or duplicated. So for sure then, there can be no translation. What we can know in another language is the meaning of the ayah. What does the ayah mean? When we recite, for example, when we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, what does it mean? That has a meaning that we can say in Arabic. And we can explain the meaning of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim or mention the meaning of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim in Arabic, and that meaning can be translated to English. You can translate that meaning word for word. Because now it's not about the ayat themselves that are miracles. Now it's about the meaning of the ayat themselves. So those meanings obviously can be expounded because the Quran, not only is it a clear book, it is a concise book. It is a book that contains, for example, a few words, but with very vast and rich meanings. Alhamdulillah. So this is something that will be benefited from Allah, inshallah. So let's start with Al-FaatiHah. And what we're going to do with this, or the way that we're going to do it, is that we're going to first recite together. And then we're going to do some tajweed, meaning explaining some tajweed as it is pertaining to Al-FaatiHah itself, and maybe give an overview of it as well. And whoever wants to volunteer to be heard, because I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, whoever wants to volunteer to be heard, to have their Fatiha validated, checked, even if you've done it before, it's always good to, from time to time, check if you've been doing it correctly. Because why? Because you need it for the prayer. And the prayer is the best good deed after being a Muslim. So on the count of three then, we will start with Al-Isti'adah, and then we'll go into Al-FaatiHah. And like I said, we're going to be reciting in unison together. 1, 2, 3. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. Al-FaatiHah is also one of those surahs that has many blessings and benefits and virtues that are associated with reciting it. It's mentioned that one of the many times that the devil himself screamed and screeched and shrieked is when Al-FaatiHah was revealed. So you can recite Surah Al-FaatiHah for facilitation. If you want a certain matter that you are trying to carry out, if you want it to be facilitated, you can recite Al-FaatiHah before starting, before you engage in that thing. So let's say that you have a job interview and you want to get that job, you want it to be facilitated. Before you go, you recite Al-FaatiHah with the intention of facilitation. If there's something you want to accomplish in your life, before you engage in it, recite Al-FaatiHah for facilitation. You can recite it one time and you can recite it 7 times. When you, let's say, when you hear of a deceased Muslim, you recite Al-FaatiHah and you grant them a similar reward. So going into the meaning of what we recited, when we say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, this itself is not part of the Quran, and it does not have the judgment of the Quran. This is something that is recommended for the Muslim to recite before he starts reciting the Quran, and this is called Al-Isti'adha. Al-Isti'adha. It means I seek the protection of Allah to preserve me against the harm of the deprived and expelled Satan, who is a deviant and transgressing blasphemer among the jinn. That's the meaning when we say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. When you say that, that's the meaning of it. I seek the protection of Allah to preserve me against the harm of the deprived and expelled Satan, who is a deviant and transgressing blasphemer among the jinn. That's the meaning. But you see how different it is when you say it in Arabic? A'udhu billahi. That part right there, it means I seek the protection of Allah. Look how many syllables I had to use. I seek the protection of Allah. In English, when you say it in Arabic, A'udhu billahi. So by consensus, the isti'adha is not part of the Quran. No. So that's the first part that I recited. Then the first ayah of the Quran, and of Al-FaatiHah, is Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. And that is according to Imam Al-Shafi'i. The Quran begins, every surah of the Quran except one begins with Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, the Basmalah. Now according to Imam Al-Shafi'i, the Basmalah is one of the verses of Al-FaatiHah without which the prayer is invalid. So according to Al-Shafi'i, if you don't recite Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim when you're praying, and then you go straight to Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, the prayer won't be valid according to Al-Shafi'i. However, Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa do not consider the Basmalah to be a verse of the Fatiha. So according to them, you don't have to recite it. No. So this is an example of a difference of opinion that, for example, was not explicitly mentioned in the Quran or the Hadith, there's not been a unanimous agreement about it, this is an example of that difference of opinion that is valid to have. And that's no contradiction and that's no inconsistency. This is actually a facility for the Muslim nation. Some beneficial information about the Basmala, that the habit of the Salaf and the Khalaf is to start their written works with the Basmala, yani following the Quran. And it is recommended, Sunnah, to start every religiously important matter with the Basmala, excluding those matters that the rules of the religion specified their beginning with other than the Basmala. So for everything that's religiously praised, start it with the Basmala, except if the religion specified something else to start it with. Who knows an example? If you raise your hand and if you're in the chat, you can type it in the chat. But what's an example of something that is religiously recommended to do or say that the religion specifies something other than the Basmala to start it with? Let's see who knows. You can raise your hand or you can just say the answer out loud. And if you're in the chat, you can just type it in the chat. The question is, give an example of a religiously praised act that the religion orders you, specifies you to start it with other than the Basmala. Because we said every religiously important matter is recommended to start it with the Basmala, except what the religion says, start it with something else other than the Basmala. What act is it that the religion specified for us to start with Allahu Akbar? The prayer. So there's one example. So the prayer, Islamically, we're ordered to start it with Allahu Akbar. How do we enter into the prayer? We say Allahu Akbar. We don't enter the prayer by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So what's another example? We can give another example of an action that's religiously good, that the religion specified that you start it with something other than the Basmala. Like dua. So you're not recommended Islamically to start your dua with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It's recommended to start your dua with Alhamdulillah and As-salatu was-salam upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But so the rule is, anything that's religiously praised, it's recommended to start it with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, except those things that the religion ordered you to start it with something else. Like the prayer, you started with Allahu Akbar, and like the dua, you started with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, or Alhamdulillah. طيب.
She had a question.
Yes, go ahead. Another example. I will review. Yeah, same thing. You start with Allahu Akbar, so it's counted as the prayer. No, I'll review, see if I can find another example. So what is the meaning of it? Bismillah. What does Bismillah mean? So the ba is a preposition and its object is ismi, right? The jar, the harf jar, this is going into grammar. The preposition, the ba, with the kasra. And its object, al-majroor, which is ism, the word ism, bismi, indicate either a verb or a gerund. So the indication of the verb would be abda'u, which means I start, and the noun would be, or the gerund with the pronoun would be ibtida'i, ibtida'i. So when you say Bismillah in Arabic, it's as if you said Abda'u Bismillah. I start with Bismillah. Or it could mean Ibtida'i bi Bismillah. For example, Ibtida'i Bismillah, which means my starting is with Bismillah. But instead of saying Abda'u or Ibtida'i in Arabic, you just say Bismillah, Bismillah. You don't say Abda'u Bismillah or Ibtida'i Bismillah. You just say Bismillah. So basically it means my starting or I start with. Ism means name and it's mudaf ilayhi. And then Allah, the name Allah. The word Allah is the name of the Creator whose non-existence is impossible to be perceived in the mind. That's the meaning of, or one of the, and what it means, the name Allah. And it's the proper name of the Creator. It's a revealed name. Allah is the one and only deserving of all praises. The name of Allah is not derived from another root word. Yeah, this is important information as well. So the name Allah, lafzul jalala, Allah, alamun للذات المقدس المستحق لنهاية التذلل وغاية الخشوع. يعني علم للذات المقدس الذي يستحق العبادة. So the name, so when you say Bismillahi, it means I start with the name of Allah, yani by mentioning the name of Allah. And the name of Allah, it means the one who is attributed with Godhood, the one who deserves to be worshipped. Then it says Ar-Rahman. And Ar-Rahman is one of the exclusive names of Allah that nobody else can be named for it. And it means the one who is merciful to everyone in this life and specifically merciful to the Muslims in the next life. And Ar-Rahim, it means one of the names of Allah, not exclusive to Him. So you can call yourself Rahim or you can call yourself Ar-Rahim, and with the meaning that is any valid to be used for a human, any merciful, compassionate, etc. When we say Ar-Rahim for Allah, it means the one who is specifically merciful to the Muslims in the hereafter. And looks like we ran out of time. Inshallah, next week we'll continue. We'll finish up with Al-FaatiHah. And like I said, we'll pick different surahs. We'll start with Surah Al-Mulk after Surah Al-FaatiHah. And then we'll take it from there to see if and what we'll do. And we're open to suggestions as well. So for those online, they could direct message. For those on Zoom, you could leave a message in the room. And if you have any other way to reach out, then you may reach out. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Are there any questions about anything? Fine. Now, if, let's say, you would like to bring back, let's say, the reading of the book Collection of Goodness to this time slot, my understanding is that one of the reasons that the change was made is because lack of attendance. Even though I myself don't see it, because obviously we're all here. But, so if, for example, if we, let's say, raise the issue, then hopefully maybe we can have that changed back to the book Collections of Goodness. But if not, we'll continue forward, following and obeying our great association, and reciting the Quran together and learning Tafseer. But and I hope that you guys remain motivated, inshallah. طيب نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وبارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم.